Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Rosa and Rubiani podcast, Making Sense of This World. My name is Manas Chavla, and as always, I'm really pleased to be joined by CEO and Head of Research, Brunella Rosa. This week, we're talking about what is perhaps the largest summit and perhaps the most important international conference of the year, COP28 in the UAE. Will it manage to achieve tangible results on climate change? Brunella, could you give us a little bit of the backdrop here?
Absolutely. So this is, as we know, the Conference of the Parties, abbreviated as COP. It is the 28th meeting and is taking place in Dubai, in the United Arab Emirates. It started, there are 197 participating countries. And of course, we know that there have been lots of natural disasters in the last few months and years, so clearly action becomes urgent. So policymakers, attendees, large activists, NGOs, and so on that are meeting in Dubai are hoping that there would be some tangible result, especially because 2023 happened to be the warmest year on record, with temperature on average 1.43 degrees Celsius higher than the pre-industrial period that is defined as these 50 years between 1850 and 1900. So effectively, just before the industrialization started to take place. It was even warmer than the previous record year, which was 2016. So action is needed urgently, and clearly lots of agreements needs to be made.
So, Brunello, there's still 1 week until all of these proceedings conclude, sort of in their entirety on December 12th, but already we've seen some major announcements in the COP process. Could you talk about a few of some of these major announcements, but also really the significance of the UAE hosting a summit like COP on climate change when the UAE is one of the largest oil and gas exporting nations?
Yeah, so as you said, there's still 1 week to go, so a few announcements can be made. Something was already kind of agreed on. First of all, there are some um, agreements made with 15 nations that are oil and gas exporters, let's call it fossil fuels in general. And clearly, as UAE, as you said, as one of them, can leverage its position as organizer of the conference. And there are companies such as Exxon, Aramco, Occidental, and others that are pledging to stop adding planet warming gases by 2050. That is becoming this iconic year in which some results should be achieved. Plus, there are 22 nations that are committing to tripling their nuclear capacity in the next few years to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels, and they include the US, the UK, France, and others. So some major nations. Now, clearly, there's a debate on whether nuclear energy is polluting or not. Is not as polluting as fossil fuels, but of course, there's a problem of the nuclear waste that needs to be dealt with. So it seems to be more a short-term solution rather than a long-term. But most importantly, I would say there has been an agreement on the so-called loss and damage fund that has been agreed on and has attracted more than 400 millions in pledges from various regions and countries. The UAE and Germany have pledged 100 million each, the EU 125 millions, the UK around 50 millions, perhaps a little bit on the low side, the US and Japan that are committed 17.5 million and 10 million each. The fund would be managed by the World Bank until a more permanent solution will be found. So some initial agreement has been made, but I think there are still some uh, important progress that needs to be made.
Yeah. And what are the key sort of issue areas that are still remaining to gain a conclusion on? Where do we need sort of more concrete results?
Yeah, so I would say that the biggest problem is the following: with neither U.S. President Biden and Chinese President Xi attending the conference, perhaps not major agreements will in fact be made, or even if they are made, question is how committed countries can be, how enforceable these agreements are, and so on and so forth. The two presidents did meet recently in San Francisco at the APEC conference. We have spoken about that in the past. And they also made some loose commitment on climate, but clearly was a bit wishy-washy. It doesn't seem like a very strong and enforceable commitment. So I would say, without the presence of the leaders of the two most polluting countries on Earth, it's very unlikely that huge results will be achieved. And then, of course, in all this, there's the electoral campaign in the US starting. And we know that Trump, when he was elected, one of the first things that he did in 2017 was withdrawing the US from the legally binding Paris Agreement made in 2015. And again, when Biden was elected, immediately after, he rejoined the Paris Agreement. So if Trump wins again, what is he going to do? Is he going to withdraw the US again? It's very likely. So climate change is clearly becoming, and it's already been, but will clearly become an object of and a subject of the US presidential electoral campaign, and therefore um, um, it will be part of a heated debate in coming months.
Yeah. And I think that factor is one that we'll continue to see in lots of policy debates. You know, the idea of Trump, a sort of right-wing populist coming back into power, effectively derailing much of the progress that's been made on lots of international initiatives as he sort of pursues or tends to pursue a more isolationist America first policy. So certainly something we'll watch for much time to come. As always, Brunello, thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you. Until next time.